Hey everyone, and welcome back to the HOG-POD. As always, thanks for joining us. We've got plenty coming up over the next couple of weeks, and as always, your support is very much appreciated. If you haven't done so already, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel and follow us on the social media. If you're listening to this on Apple or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts, same again, hit the subscribe button, and then each new episode will be downloaded to your device automatically. Today's show centres around one man's bid to ride his Harley-Davidson Pan America on a 10,000 kilometre round trip from County Cavan in Ireland to Nordkapp in Norway. And for the many riders out there that buy adventure bikes, it's trips like this that surely must be on your mind when you're making your choice. Unusually, a heads up if I can, the personal story which lays behind the huge challenge in front of today's guest touches on some difficult subjects. He lost his son in 2016, and in 2022, his wife was diagnosed with breast cancer. In addition to this, the horrendous aftermath of suicide is no stranger to him either. But it was during these hard times that today's guest received support from a number of his local charities, and as a way of giving back, he's decided to pack up his Pan America and put it to the test as he aims to reach the most northerly point on mainland Europe and home again. The Pan America hasn't been without its complications, and in comparison with other adventure motorcycles, I think it's fair to say that it's relatively untested. So it's going to be really interesting to watch this adventure unfold once it begins in hopefully a matter of weeks. And here to tell us about this challenge is Jonny Doyle, known on his social media platforms as the lad with the beard. Hello, Jonny.
Hello, Kenny. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you very much for joining us. I think probably the best way, as we always do, is why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, no problem. So, obviously, name's Johnny. I'm a Dub originally, and like most Dubs, we left Dublin to find a cheap house. So I ended up in Cavan in Ireland, obviously, and I've been living here, Jesus, a very very long time. Obviously, being from Finglas in Dublin, I've had my fair share of goes on motorbikes around fields when I was younger, etc. But we don't talk about that. And I think my love for bikes stems from my brother. So I have two brothers, and we're all into biking. But my brother Paul, who unfortunately he passed away a couple of years ago, he would have got me into biking, or he would have had scramblers, and then he moved into Honda Shadows and Viragos, and so I was quite familiar with the bikes that he had, and always like, oh man, they're deadly, they're cool. So he would be my main reason as to why I drive bikes. I actually learned how to drive bikes in his back garden at a Honda SRX 90, which I still have sitting over there, a little moped. And I used to think I was the bee's knees driving around Dublin because it has teardrop handlebars on it. So I used to pull up to the Harley guys at traffic lights, and I'd be way down here, they'd be up there, and I'd be looking at them, kind of going, "Yeah, how's it going?" So that'd be that. So yeah, so just biking for quite a number of years, and that's it. I suppose how I got into Harley Davidsons is I suppose is an interesting story. I'm a musician, or I used to be, for about 25 years. I only kind of officially retired in January of this year, and many years ago, I was driving a van down to Kerry for a wedding, and the van was very laden down with a lot of music gear. And I remember leaving. I can't remember the name of the town, but we were going to Killarney, and I remember coming to this big hill, and the van slowing down. And next of all, I heard this noise, and I was like, "What's that?" And I was overtaken. It's probably an exaggeration, not good with numbers, easily 100 Harley Davidsons, and I was just that sight, that sound, like I'm getting chills thinking of it, just blown past me, and I was like, "Oh, what is that? Where are they going? Geez, I really hope they're going to where I'm going." So it turned out we were actually staying in the Glen Eagles, and I remember pulling up and just all these Harley Davidson flags, and I was like, "What's this? Where are we staying?" And so we were staying in the Glen Eagles because we were gigging in Kenmare, and the bike fest was on. So I was walking around the bike fest, and I had let my license lapse, So I kind of hadn't been biking for a couple of years. Obviously, being a musician, you're out every weekend. So when everyone who is biking does it at the weekends, I'm gigging. So that was just it's a bit of a clash to try and meet up with friends who drive bikes. So I remember walking around the event itself, and I stumbled into one of the dealer tents, and I just seen this big sign saying "Learner Legal." And I'm like, what do you mean learner legal? Surely 1200cc motorbike cannot be a learner legal because I'm 90cc moped. So this can't be right. And I got talking to them and he explained it to me and he said that the power to weight ratio and because a Harley Davidson's really heavy and doesn't have an awful lot of power, you can drive these on a provisional license. So I remember going into the dealer, having a look at a Sportster and I said, well, look, I might need a refresher course. And they said, yeah, we do all of that. And I got linked in with a guy called Tony Toner, who is an ex-motorbike Garda. Maybe the listeners know who he is, an absolute pure gent. And I did lessons with Tony, and I did about 4. And then I went and bought my first Harley, which was a Sportster 1200 that had 147 miles on the clock because the person who bought it drove it to Limerick and put it in a sitting room and I left it there. I bought that, and since then I've kind of gone from a Sportster to I kind of broke my hand and I bought a Softail custom because of how it sounded. I didn't even test ride it. Probably should have because it drove like an absolute tank. Spent 10 years loving and hating that bike, and then I one day I seen a Street Glide and I thought that's really nice. It's got bags on it. That's pretty cool because the Softail had no luggage on it whatsoever, and I really struggled to even put a bag on the back seat. And yes, I bought a Street Glide, and then I started getting into the thoughts of going down. I really abused the Street Glide. Don't watch this if I'm selling it. And you go back and go, you just said you abused. I probably brought it places that probably roads that shouldn't really be going down on. I did the Irish Photo Rally Challenge. That's challenging enough on a 700-pound bike. Yeah, a lot of mud and a lot of muck, and I loved it. Yeah, I loved the touring frame and everything to do with that. So yeah, I just kind of got into wanting to look at something different. And a friend of mine had bought a Pan America, the first edition that came out, and I was aware of the challenges that the Pan America kind of had. And I used to go up to Donegal quite a lot to visit a friend of mine called Harley Mick. And I remember one night Decky was there and he had the Pan America parked in the bike room and my bed was right beside it. So I spent the evening just looking at this monstrosity of an adventure bike, and that kind of sparked my interest in it. And then last year, I kind of had an opportunity to get one, and I researched it quite a lot. I researched can short people ride Pan Americas? That was what my YouTube search was. And I found Danny Hayes, $1 Million Bogan. Probably not the best man to watch a review on a Pan America because he fell off it quite a lot. But again, I thought, Jesus, a great bike. And then I test rode a load of bikes, and the adaptive ride height is really what sold it for me. I could get 2 feet on the ground. I'm not going to lie, I did buy bigger boots, and there might be an insole insert into my boots. We can neither confirm or deny that. And so yeah, I eventually picked one up, and yeah, that's kind of brings you up to date on who I am.
You mentioned there some bikes I haven't heard for ages. So the Virago, the 535S, if I remember rightly.
Yes, yeah. It was my brother is a massive Prince fan, and that got me being a Prince fan. And the iconic Purple Rain, even though that's not a Virago, it's just the style of it. He couldn't get he couldn't get that one. Yeah, so he had the Viragos and the Shadows, and all of them. Great bikes, shaft driven, so maybe they had it right at the start. But yeah, really nice bikes.
The personal story behind the main topic of today's show, which is a trip to the northernmost point in Europe. Nordkapp in Norway, which you're going to do on the Pan America. I'll come back to that because I think that in itself is a balls out. There you go. I think that's a balls out challenge. But you said you had an opportunity to do some biking last year. I know that you've had some time of it over the last number of years. Could I ask you to share a little bit about that?
I've had a couple of things happen over the last 7 odd years. In 2016, in June 2016, my son was stillborn, and we had to deal with that. So my son Tig, ironically at the time, and I think my wife wants me to mention this, when it happened, I was obviously, we were a one income family and my income was music, and I was actually booked to play the Killarney Bike Fest on the Sunday, and my son was stillborn on the Saturday. And I suppose this kind of feeds into the whole story, just in general about me, and the kind of things that I do. We had these discussions in the aftermath afterwards, and I remember saying, like, what about the gig? And it was like, I'm a passionate musician. I hate letting people down, and but I went to Killarney. We agreed I'd go do the gig on the Sunday, and I went and did the gig. I drove all the way down to Killarney. So I have a thing. I've always gone to the bike fest as much as I can when I wasn't gigging. And I went to Killarney to do them gigs. It is a big regret, so the wife would be happy that we have that on record officially. But like anything, when you lose a child or you have an event like that happen, you have no idea what you're doing. You're on this autopilot, and as a man looking back, hey, you go do that, and you don't have to worry about any of this. Yeah, I think subconsciously I was like, yeah, let's go. And I went and did the gig. I don't remember much about it. I've seen pictures and videos. I was on the main stage in the arena where the outdoor stage. I don't remember much about the gig, and I went and did gigs after that, and then I ended up coming home to deal with the aftermath. My wife had more or less arranged all the other bits of it. But that journey of child loss is something I never wish on my worst enemy. No one ever expects to bury their child. I've had to do it 3 times, because as the story unfolded, we did have a lengthy battle with the HSE over it, and we did come to no, it kind of came to the end. It was medical misadventure in the inquest, and then these things are not fast. And when you go through something like this, it takes years to sort out. So in the course of that, I found out that my son's brain and left lung had been retained without our knowledge. And the only reason we found that out was my wife got a phone call one day she was sitting in a cafe, and a lovely man from the morgue rang to see, did you want them back, or will he dispose of them in medical waste? We were completely unaware that they even existed. We thought when we got our son back he was complete, but he was actually missing his brain and his left lung. And so we got them back, and I led that procession of the funeral, all the funerals on the bike, and we did that, and then further went on, and then we found out they had retained more bits of my son, so we had to do that again, and but this time was kind of really cool. I don't mean to get upset about it, because I actually got to drive my bike to the funeral home, and actually I had the casket with the last bits, and he actually sat in the back seat, and I drove him to his resting place. So I had my first and only proper ride with my son. I think every father would say, you got. I have 3 beautiful daughters. Don't get me wrong. Everyone says your son is someone who's always going to love your bikes. So I got to ride. I got to do his final. Touch wood. I haven't heard that they took anything else, and did that. So yeah, so that took about it's 7 years in. Is it 7 years? I hope I have that right. This bank holiday weekend. So we have an affiliation with Killarney on the June bank holiday weekend. So we've been going down every single time that we possibly could, and we call it Tigers Weekend, and then we do that in Killarney. So yeah, that's kind of like my son's story. It's been a long road. I've had a lot of darkness throughout that time as well. So
Yeah, for the GB listeners, HSE would be the Irish equivalent of our NHS, and I know that you've had the you explained there that there's the long ongoing battle. It probably is the word with your local health, your health service. Just going back to what you said there about putting the regret on record, it's I don't think there's no right and wrong way to deal with this type of thing. I buried me and my wife, we buried a little boy as well, and you know, there isn't a right and wrong way to do it. You said there about going to Killarney to do the gig, and it was probably the way that you coped with it at the time, and it's so yes, the regret is on record, Johnny, but I don't think that you'll never be judged for it, brother.
I only get judged if there's an argument, but that's just women, and I don't mean to offend any women who may be listening.
Hurt is how hurt comes out.
Well, that's it. I think the important thing when it comes to grief, people say time is a healer. It's not. You just it just changes over time. That's the way I look at it. My advice for any parents that are going through infant loss or any loss is you're on a grief journey, and the one thing that we definitely experienced was a man and a woman suffer grief completely different. I didn't have my son inside me. My wife had. She felt all of that. So there's a disconnect there. So what you tend to find with men in general is they don't talk about it. It's we don't talk about this, and I'm a big advocate for talking, because I spoke is the reason why I'm still here. And I will talk about that. I have no problem in talking about that. I spoke to somebody, and I'm still here, straight up, because in the time afterwards, just in relation to grief journey, a woman and a man, or a wife and a husband, they can be on a different level of grief of the journey itself. So you sometimes find the men tend to always be way ahead of the woman, and that can grow resentment, because the woman can sit there and go, why aren't you not as churned up as I am? So it's always important to talk to each other and to equalize that grief journey, because sometimes the woman doesn't realize he's grieving in his own way, and it's really bad. It's not the same type of grief. It's different. So you need to have that equalization conversation where you're both realizing where you are, because if you don't, resentment grows, and it's that resentment that can destroy a relationship. So it's always good to talk. In the immediate aftermath of my son dying, my wife had to go back into hospital, and I remember sitting there one night and I couldn't sleep. And I had two other children in the house at the time that I was looking after, and I couldn't sleep. And this darkness, it's the only way I can describe it. It's like a darkness, just everything just goes around in your head. And I just had this instant, just like if I got into a car and just drove into a wall, that's it. This all ends. And I remember having that thought, and I remember just going, oh, whoa, whoa, whoa. I couldn't sleep. I kept waking myself up. And then I was falling back asleep, and I kept thinking straight back to that car wall. And, I was like, no, no, no. And I reached out to somebody, and it's actually a UK based Daddies with Angels. And I spoke to a guy called Paul who runs that. And he actually just called me, and I got speaking to Paul, and he helped me, and that was it. That's all I needed. I didn't need I've done counseling. I've done all of that. I felt it absolutely pointless. I'm a very logical thinker. Just that I actually just spoke to somebody who knew exactly where I was coming from. And in terms of anything that anyone's ever going through, there is people who have been through it who are willing to talk to you, to help you, and to stop you making that decision. Because suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem. And I coined that phrase from another YouTube blogger. I don't know where the phrase came from. Danny Hayes, $1 Million Bogan. He's the one who would have. That's where I heard that phrase first. I don't know where it came from. And yeah, speaking about it is great. It needs to be done. Because I've been through the mill in relation to my son. I've appeared on Primetime Investigates for organ retention. I've walked into newsagents, and there I am on the front of the newspaper. Numerous newspapers. Yeah. So I've been through the mill in terms of that, and so has my wife, and we've I'd like to say we've come out the other side of it all. But our story is unique with the organ retention, with the legal cases and stuff like that, and the fact that he should be here. That's the bottom line. Is that
Of
it was
course,
he should be.
I think that's where it rolls back to. Again, for the GB listeners, the prime time series that Johnny's talking about would be the equivalent of our panorama. So again, I'm gonna leave a lot of links at the end of this episode and in the description of everything that we're talking about today. Just and if anyone is looking to look at it a little bit further. I know during this time you received help from one of your local charities, which I believe is Phil Kane.
Féileacán.
Féileacán. Okay,
Féileacán.
that's an
Yeah,
English thing. You can have to accept my
that's
apologies.
that's no problem. Féileacán. I honestly can't. Féileacán come into a point. People who don't know about Féileacán haven't are lucky, and if you've never heard of them, I'm delighted for you. I really am, because what they do is they do things for you that you don't think of at the time when you lose a child, or a stillbirth. They Yeah, they just came out of nowhere. I never heard of them. So in the immediate aftermath of my son passing away, they gave us a thing called we call it a cuddle cot, but it's without being too descriptive, it's just a cold cot. It allows you to have your son or your daughter in the room with you, because I don't want to think about you know where they store. Anyway, you have the child with you in the room, so you get that time, and you can pick him up, and you can give him a cuddle. When you want to, you can put him down, so he remains in the room with you, not where they would put him. Anyway, that's it. Yeah. So, and that gives you that sense of connection, because as a father you don't get that connection because you didn't birth the child, so you get that time. And we had the cuddle cot for days. Now they provide the cuddle cots. I think every hospital in Ireland has one, and they're about €2,500. They're quite expensive, and they gave that. But another thing they gave was a memory box. Now you don't think of clippings of hair, and they also gave imprints of the feet and the hands into clay, and then they frame it for you and they give it to you. And there's loads of other, like, blankets and wristbands and stuff like that, just trinkets. At the time when it happens, you're not thinking straight. You wouldn't think of doing these things. But as the time goes on, I have that box upstairs. I have them. I have his feet in his hands. I've got that. And these are things you don't think of. So every now and again, I will pull that box out, and I go, I have his hair, and I've got things like that. And they provide these memory boxes, and the memory boxes they're like €50 each, and they give them out. Since then, they do workshops, they do remembrances, and as with anybody, and this plays a part into why I'm doing it, and some of the things I'm doing for it is, people want their children to be remembered, or their loved ones, or anyone that's died. They want them to be remembered. They because when I die or my wife dies, who's going to remember my son? So it's all about they're never forgotten. To coin a charity here, gone but not forgotten. That's the biker thing that people always say, and that's part of it. So Féileacán help you remember, and they're just that's something that you know. Yeah, they just came out and did that, and they're fantastic for doing it. So this is my second time to raise funds for them. I did shave my head before. I had long hair down to my arse, and I shaved my head for them as well. So yeah, top notch charity, and just very well run as well. So I'm delighted to give anything towards them as well. So
There's a couple of things blew my mind first of all about this trip. So it's a 10,000 round trip to Nordkapp, which you think is one of a kind, the first man on the planet to do it. And then I started to research it and I realized, Jesus, there's loads of people doing this. Okay, so I got around that bit. All right. And then you're doing it on a Pan America. And this is the bit that really captured me because I said in the introduction, the Pan America is it's had its complications. Its reliability is currently relatively untested compared to other bikes. Tell me how this trip came about, and what's the plan? How are you doing it?
Yeah, so I suppose I would have the longest trip I ever done. I did Thunder in the Glens, and I did the NC 500, and I came back to Cavan, and that was about 2,500 kilometers. So during that trip, we decided to go to John O'Groats, because my brother who passed away, Paul, his dream one of his dream rides was to ride the John O'Groats. So we did that for him, and that was fine. But at some point in on that ride, myself and my older brother Stephen, we we talked about, oh, what would we do next? Where would we go next? And he said he spoke to Paul about doing Nordkapp, Nord Cape. He spoke about doing that, but my brother Paul, he didn't want to do it because it was too cold, and he wanted to go to Spain, and that was kind of the seed being planted. It was like Nordkapp, never Nord Cape, never heard of it. Where is this? And I suppose last year, October 2020, that summertime 2022, sorry, we were discussing what we're going to do, where we're going to go, and I looked it up, and I thought, oh man, this is like Route 66 for Europe. This is a must do. This is a must do place to go to, and I because I like Kerry, and for anyone that's been to Kerry, they know it's peaks and troughs, and you're driving, there's a massive drop and there's big mountains, and Norway is just that on steroids. Everything is just bigger, and it's massive. And so I thought about, yeah, this is really cool. So I said, yeah, let's do it. And we were going to go do it last year, and then the wife got diagnosed with breast cancer, so we stuck a pin in it, and we didn't get to do it. But it kind of mainly just came from a conversation off the cut somewhere in the middle of Scotland's NC 500 at a campsite with my brother, and he just mentioned it, and I looked it up and thought, that looks like a meaty place to go. It looks like a class place. Um, so yeah, I do have a street glide. I could do it on a nice touring model. I do. I recently upgraded to Wilbur suspension. Thanks, Steph. He sorted me out, Stefan, and yeah, I could do it on that, and that'd be great. But then I got into doing the Pan America, and I thought, I could just do it on the pan. It's got to be fun, because it's twisty. I'm not I'm not one for the knee down kind of guy. I like taking it. I like taking it leisurely. They call me the slow glide. I'm not the fastest in the world.
Right. Okay.
So
I think anyone that's buying Harley is past the knee down stage anyway. We're always not interested.
Yeah, I think so. So yeah, the Pan America came along. I got an opportunity to get one last year, and I did my research on it. I was trying to figure out, can short people ride it, etc. And I went, okay, cool, I can. So I got it. I do have concerns about the bike in general, as any Pan America owner who's done their research knows, that the charging system, the battery, the cat wine, there's all them concerns about the bike. Now, early iterations of the bike, without a doubt, had problems. Without a shadow of a doubt, it's well documented online. And Harley, being Harley, they didn't do a recall. They addressed the issues with the wiring looms, the grounding points. Now, I had 11,000 ish kilometers of trouble free. I had no issues at all whatsoever. And the bike started on the button, never had a problem. I've cut the bike out of traffic lights and panic and hit the button, the bike doesn't start. But sure, any bike does that. And then I had the cat wine. I had the famous cat wine, and the bike wouldn't start. And I was like, "Oh shit! It's all true." Here I am. I'm stuck. I'm in the middle. I was out doing a video on my 10,000 kilometer review on the bike, And it happened, and I was like, well, it's going to make this review a hell of a lot more interesting. And yeah, and so I reached out to Belfast Harley Davidson, and I had planned on getting my hose pipe had to be done, and that was another thing that was wrong with the bike. And I dropped it up, and they worked the magic. I got a new battery in the bike, but it definitely put brought into focus, is this the right bike for this? And I'm like, I kind of to and fro, and I questioned the bike's ability to do it. But with anything I find online, if you want to find what's wrong with something, just go look on Facebook or forums, and that's the nature of social media. No one for every post saying this bike is trash or any bike is trash, there's 20 posts not being made about how the bike is not trash, and I have no problems. It's the nature of social media,
100%.
and that
Of course.
transcribes that goes to everything. That goes to, do you want to find out if this phone is any good? Just look up
Yeah.
online and
Or
you'll find
accommodation or
anything.
restaurants or
It's the nature of the beast to slate and complain. And then of course you have the people who don't own one saying, oh, I wouldn't trust that bike, I wouldn't do that. And that's fine. You do you, but it's a Harley Davidson. I couldn't see myself sitting on a GS 1250 or the 1300, which again is only out. And again, if you want to find problems on that bike, just go look it up online. But there's hundreds of other people that don't have that problem. So I'm prepared. I've prepared the bike for the worst case scenario. I've got the battery location is quite interesting. It doesn't allow for a jump start if need be. But Aidan in Belfast and the lads there put me onto a device that will give me a jump start if need be, and the cabling for it. So I have a hardwired outlet from the battery terminal that will go to a jump starter. And Aidan and the lads put me onto, and I located it. It's quite tricky to find one in Europe, and that's fine. And I'm up in Belfast in a couple of weeks getting the bike prepped. We're getting full service done. We're getting everything changed, and he's got spare fuses for me as well. Better looking at it than looking for it. So puncture repair kits. So the bike is getting fully done. I'm getting my tires done by one of my supporting companies here in Southern Ireland, in CC Unlimited in Kells, is looking after me for my tires. And then Belfast is going up for just as general service, because it's at a service interval, but then there's 10,000 kilometers to come. So I am concerned about the bike. Some people say the Pan America doesn't like the cold. I'm going to find out. Just
I
how
was just
how
about to say, at least you'll be able to find out as opposed to reading about it. If you don't mind me asking, how many miles are on it at the moment?
I'm
Or
just
kilometers? Sorry, how many kilometers are on it?
I just passed 13,000 kilometers on the bike.
Right.
It's
Okay.
and it's not even a year. It's not a year old yet. I think it's about 10 or 11 months, and I've done about 13,000 kilometers on it so far. So
It's interesting that you said that you had 10,000 kilometers of trouble-free riding, and then it was after that things changed, because certainly in the first iterations, and again, if even on the Harley Davidson Facebook page itself, you will see people saying, oh, you'll have no problems with it for 10,000 miles, and then wallop. So it's interesting that you've actually found that yourself.
yeah, and some people would say the complete opposite. Say I didn't even get 100 miles done and it's broken down. So there is people that would, there is various reports of it. The stator and the starter were questionable. My one is a mid-year model with the upgraded with the upgraded heavier units in it. So I didn't suffer that, as in some of the other people did. But it's the peace of mind having a factory warranty as well. I can go to any dealer within the EMEA region, and I can be looked after in terms of warranty. So there is that peace of mind. But obviously, I don't want to break down.
Of course. So two questions, sort of interlinked. The route that you're taking. Tell us about the route, and on that route, have you factored in any dealerships, either for a visit to grab a T-shirt or a just in case something goes wrong?
Yeah, so on the 3rd of May, I'm driving to Belfast, and I'll stay the night. and then the 4th of May begins. So I leave Belfast to go over into Scotland, and then I have a day to make it to Newcastle to get a ferry into the Hook of Holland. And then when I get into the Hook of Holland, I have a day to make it to the top of Germany, which I think is going to be okay. It's mostly motorway, and then find somewhere to stay, a campsite or whatever. Or I don't think I can wild camp in Germany, so it'll probably be a campsite, and then cross over into Sweden. And this is where my trip differs from pretty much anyone else I found. They all tend to go up Norway and down Norway, and they also tend to take weeks or months to do so. I'm going up Sweden, all the way up across over into Finland, then into Norway, up to Nordkapp or Nordkapp. I better say this right. And then that's when I have to come down. So I plan on coming down Norway, and I think that's when it gets more challenging, because doing massive distances in Norway is not really the norm. Most people will do about 200 or 300 kilometers, and then call it a night. To make it in the time frame that I have, I need to be hitting between 500 to 600, maybe 700. So it's a lot of driving. I do have the benefit of the 24-hour sun, so the midnight sun. So it's not going to be overly dark. I've no problems in driving in the dark. I do have the auxiliary blinding lights on the bike, so I can definitely light up the road in that sense. And of course, I passed the Arctic Circle on the way up, so the temperatures are going to get fairly cold, fairly chilly in that sense. So yeah, and then back down through Norway all the way. And I think I found a dealer, a Harley Davidson dealer in Norway. They're quite far up. Um, I'm a little concerned because any pictures I've seen of the dealer, there's just snowmobiles parked outside. There's no bikes parked outside the dealership. So maybe that's a I'm not sure. So if they do listen
Yeah.
to it, can they let me know if they do t-shirts, and also do you sell snow chains for the bike? Because that is one of my concerns when I go up there. While I think the roads are open, and so most of the roads are open. I have an app that tells me most of the roads that I'm planning on going down are actually closed at the moment. So that when they're open, are they open just for cars and trucks, or are they open for motorbikes? So I do have a slight concern. So if there's any Norwegian, Swedish, Finland bikers, can you let me know what the roads are like? So like I said, the challenge is to get there. So I'll get there, hell for leather. I don't know how, if the roads are covered in snow. I might find some snow chains, but apart from that, then it's all the way back down Norway. I'm then going into Denmark, and then back into Germany, Holland, back over into England, Newcastle, back over to Scotland, back into Belfast, and then back home. So that is the plan for the trip.
It's a hell of a trip, and yeah, it's a Route 66 without the heat.
Obviously, with the donations, I'm having stickers made of the lad with the beard, and I will be selling them. And I haven't come up with a price yet for them, but the price, whatever the price will be, you make that donation to the to the GoFundMe, and then I'm going to cover the cost of just posting the sticker out. I don't care where you are in the world. So if I say a fiver, the sticker's a fiver. That fiver goes to the charities, and I'm going to post the sticker out to you. So I'm going to have some stickers, and apparently there's places I can stick them as I'm going up, so that's fine. Mel Signs in Cavan is looking after me for the stickers. So he's really good. That's Neil. And then we have a company called Mama Bear Bakes. They're a local charity, and they're donating 15% of all cupcake sales up into the run up of Easter straight to the charity as well. So you can go grab yourself a cupcake. The last one then is Decky and Lisa have given me a flag, a Nordkapp flag. So this is a kind of a multifaceted kind of approach here. So as I said earlier on, remembering people who your loved ones you've lost is always important. I love when people ask me about my son. So does my wife. I'll talk about him until the cows come home. I have no problem in talking about it at all, and everyone should talk about people they've lost. So Decky and Lisa got me a flag with Nordkapp written on it. Sorry, so they got me a flag. Hold upside down. This flag is coming with me, and one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to ask people to make, they can make a donation, however grateful small, and then they can email the lad with the beard at gmail.com and tell me the name of the loved one they want remembered. I'm going to write it on the flag. I'm going to get a bit emotional here. I'm going to write it on the flag. And when I get to the monument, I'm going to stand there with the flag and I'm going to call out the name of your loved one that you've lost. And it's my way of being at the top of Europe and remembering the person that you lost. And that's it.
You're winging this, and it definitely sounds like a wing. And obviously, you still have to pack. You still have to, you have to pack your bike. What makes it onto a packing list for a winging it tour to Norway?
Right. So I've got obviously the hard pannier setup, and I've added 20-liter bags on the top of each pannier. I've added 6-liter bags to the crash bars, and I've yet to add a tank bag. So that is generally roughly the what I'm packing. So what I do have to pack on that is I'm camping all the way. There's no hotels. There's no fancy sleeping pods. It's camping. I will either primarily look for a wild camp spot or failing that a campsite. And because of the time of the year, I should have a great flexibility in just finding a campsite. And because I'm doing it solo, I'm not. I don't have to book anything, and that's one of the reasons. So I have a tent. I have all the bits and bobs for my tent setup, and my sleeping setup. I did have to reinvent the wheel there for myself in terms of my tent setup. So I was looking up what's the best cold weather tent. So I got my down sleeping bag. I found sleeping pads for a company called HOG-POD. So there's that. I'm cooking all the way. So I don't plan on going into restaurants or anything like that. So I'm cooking all the way. So I have my jet boil, I have my MSR pocket rocket stove, I've got my pots, my pans, my cups, I've got my coffee, lots of coffee, got all of that sorted. So that's all in there as well. I've obviously got my camera set up, I've got GoPros, a lot of battery banks. I've adapted the bike to charge up battery banks and my phone, my sat nav. I've also got heated equipment that Keys Apparel UK have generously supported me with that. So I've got heated gloves, I've got a heated jacket, and that's all powered to the bike as well. So I'm carrying that. I don't. I've got base layers. There is a running joke here with the wife that I'll probably put the base layers on in Cavan and then take them off in Cavan when I get back. They probably won't. Mightn't find a shower. I have been asked to go for a shower or a wash in some sort of lake that's frozen and video myself doing that. I'm not sure that's going to be a pretty sight. I think I can blur it all out, so I might go and try to do that. So yeah, I got the Bark Busters muffs. I've obviously got risers. And then I'm bringing a lot of parts with me. I have to clean the chain, so it's not a shaft-driven bike; it's a chain. So I have to make sure the chain is cleaned thoroughly every 1,000 kilometers. So I've been doing that myself. I have to oil it. There's so that in itself was a bit shit. How do I do this in the middle of nowhere? Because I'm going to wake up and I'm going to have to maintain the chain. So I'm buying chain cleaning devices and I'm cutting them in half to reduce the weight because I don't need the other end of it. So I got things like that. I've got the battery pack, and I carry spare oils, and all of my bike fuses. So the bike will be pretty laden down.
There's a reason you're doing this by yourself, Johnny. You know that, don't you?
Go ahead.
Because no one else is going to do this with you. I think this is absolutely brilliant. But tell me this: what does your wife think about this? Is she supportive of it? Does she think you're a lunatic, or is this just another Johnnyism? And she's like, well, yeah.
I think when I came up with the idea, she was like, "All right, cool. So I'm going to mind the kids, am I?" I think that was probably the first reaction to it. And I was like, "Well, and then she was obviously when she was going through the cancer and the treatment for all of that, she was like, I think it's like my reward for being a great husband. I think that's, I think that's the only reason I'm getting away with it. Anyone I explain it to, they think my wife has the patience of a saint, or where did you get her from? Um, she in a million year, she in a million years will not. She's not even entertaining the idea of coming along, or that's far too cold. Not a chance. No way am I doing that. But she's fully supportive of it, and I think when I came up with the idea of doing the fundraising, then it was like, that's a great idea. So she's at this moment in time, she's 100% behind it. Oh, no doubt I'll be halfway there. She's going to tell me the kids ain't going to bed, and I'm going to be sitting there in the middle of the middle of a fjord cooking a steak, going, "Oh, yeah, oh, terrible, oh." But we'll buy her a Toblerone.
And timeline wise, you've talked about the time frame that you need to do it in, and the mileage that you need to cover each day. Have you given yourself a limit? Is there a set limit for this type of trip, or is it self imposed?
Anything I've looked up said, you like I suppose when I live in Ireland, so people ask me all the time, how long do I need to do the Wild Atlantic Way? And the answer is, you can do it in 3 to 4 days if you want to, but you won't enjoy it. Or you give it 3 months and you'll still have not enough time. So any vlogs I've watched, they take weeks and weeks and weeks, or months and months and months to do it. So I have a very set definitive time. I have the ferry. The ferries are booked to get me there and back on the mainland and the main ferries. I have 19 days up and back. That is my limit. So I
So
roughly,
just shy of 3 weeks.
yeah. So when I was planning it out, I was trying to cost it. So I did Google Maps and just kind of said, oh, if I go from there to there to there to there, and I did it on a day. So I have a rough itinerary that can be completely thrown out the window. So I have 19 days. So when I'm looking at it, everything is like, 640 kilometers, 519 kilometers, 715 kilometers, 600, 400, 500, 400, 300, 300, 500, and all the way down. And it's 10,022 kilometers in total. So, and I've highlighted some of them in red, saying that's a bit tricky to do because, in some of the regions I'm in, if I don't get the ferry to take a little island hop, it's 300 kilometers around to get to it. And any of the advice I've seen more or less said to me, 300 kilometers in Norway is not 300 kilometers in the United States. So 300 kilometers in Norway is 7 hours, where 300 kilometers in Germany is not.
We did an episode with a guy called Gary France, which I'm not sure if you've heard of him. He is based in England. He's an authorized tour operator for Harley Davidson, and he does tours right around the world, and I mean literally right around the world. New Zealand was the furthest I've sort of followed on his Facebook while he's away. And one of the questions that we asked him brought out the fact that the distance covered per day is often overestimated in a group of people. Now, I think, again, it's different because it's you and you're just by yourself, but certainly within a group, he said, you have in your mind what you're going to cover, and the reality can be very, very different. But
Yes.
if you were to run over and it turned out that you could do this, but it's not going to be 19 days, it's going to be 25, 26, 27, does that scupper you, or does that just change the day you come home?
In my planning, this is the most planning I've done for anything, and I think it's a case of when I started to do a bit of research, I thought, shit, maybe I should have a rethink about these things. I have 1 day built into the whole thing to allow a delay, basically. I have my tickets. My tickets are flexi fare, so I can change them. So if need be, I'm not completely scuppered if I need to extend things. The challenge for the whole lot is really northern Norway. That's what's really going to dictate how it goes, because as far down to the Lofoten Islands, basically until I recross the Arctic Circle, until I get back across the Arctic Circle in Norway, because when from what I can view and what I see is the main roads are fine, but the main roads are not exactly, how should I put it, straight. they're, they're they're like this, and there's a lot of places I want to. There's a lot of places I've seen that I'm like, oh, well, I want to travel there, like the Trolls Pass, or I think it's pronounced Trollstein. Historically, that doesn't open up until on average mid-May. I'm getting there on mid-May, and either side of the road there's 40, 50 foot snowbanks, and I just thinking that's the picture I want, because I'm vlogging the whole way. I'm constantly thinking about the content, the pictures, the drone shots. So the more snow I find, the better. I think I'm bringing a snow shovel for the laugh as well. I'm going to bring a snow shovel. I'm going to have a snowball fight with myself. I'm going to throw snowballs at myself. So yeah, I think some of the distance I have planned is what some people would say is overreaching, is it's excessive and undoable. That just sounds like a challenge. It's like, okay, well, I can. The only I'm not
To me, that's a dare. Yeah.
yeah, I'm not stupid. I'm not going to take I'm not going to take over risks. I am on my own. I do have backup. I do have if something happens, I have beacons to alert. I'm being careful in that sense. I won't place myself in jeopardy.
So there's three charities altogether, isn't there? There's the first one that we've already spoke about, and then the second one, is it the Cavan Centre? Is it?
The Coon Centre in Cavan. So the Coon Centre in Cavan is a charity that supports cancer, people who have suffered cancer or suffering cancer. So obviously, then in October 2022, my wife was diagnosed with breast cancer. Not that she had enough to deal with. Might as well just throw some breast cancer in for the laugh. And basically, that was around the time I was planning on doing this, and she had a test done, and then they found out that it was cancer. So that was that, and then she had a mastectomy. These support groups are great. They're run locally. Again, like anything, you only know about these when you go through something like that. Um, they run workshops. So they had workshops for the wife, and then really importantly, and this is something that I don't think I can really underestimate, not emphasize enough, is they ran workshops for children, and that was like workshops for children. So my kids went to these workshops. They were able to actually meet other children whose parents are going through it. So it was my children were 8 or 9 at the time, or 8. Yeah, they're 9 now, and so they were met other children whose parents are going through that. So they kind of had that. I'm not saying they had a massive discussion about cancer, but they didn't. They kind of felt like, oh, it's not the terrible, terrible thing that we might hear, because when people think cancer, they think, well, you're dead. Cancer is survivable in general terms. You get the right treatment and you catch it early enough, etc. So get yourself checked out, ladies, and men do the same thing. And they ran them workshops, but they're always there, the end of the phone, and they have a house down in Cavan Town, and they're everywhere. These places are everywhere, and they're fantastic, and they do organize to bring people to treatments, etc., stuff like that. Now, my wife used a different charity for that in Cavan, and we did give some. We didn't do fundraising for them, but we have donated to them as well. Brought her to all our treatments, so they were fantastic. They're in Ballyjames stuff here in Cavan, but the Coon Centre have been great at support for people going through cancer treatment, and they continue to do so. So my wife went through 3 months of 3 months of chemotherapy. She then did 12 weeks of radiation treatment. She's gotten the all clear, so that's absolutely fantastic. But she continues to
That's
suffer.
great news, Johnny.
It is. It's yeah. In 7 years of having to deal with a lot of shit, it was certainly most welcomed news.
Yeah.
And
Well due.
she continues to use them for treatments, because the radiation impacts your bones and your muscles. So she had a very stiff shoulder and stuff like that, and they continue to provide treatment for that. So again, it's just you don't know about these things until you need them, and yeah, they're
And then the third and last one is I believe another local one, Save Our Sons and Daughters. It's a suicide prevention and support charity, isn't it?
so sad. When we buried my son, the wife coined the phrase Tig's Garden rather than calling it a grave. So we call it Tig's Garden. As a man, I didn't want to talk about it with my kids, but my wife took the decision to make sure that my kids knew who he was, and as they grow older, they'll find out what happened. We obviously they don't know the ins and outs of all the details, but they'll find out what happens when they grow older. So my children are very aware they have a brother, and it was the best thing to do. It was. So Tig's garden is up there. Unfortunately, since then, Tig has been joined by young people who have ended their lives with suicide. And I always found it important to, if I can, to attend a funeral. And in the area that I'm in, it's rampant of young people committing suicide and seeking that as a solution. And as I mentioned earlier on, a permanent solution to a temporary problem. All you need to do is talk. Obviously, talking can only do so much. There has to be an element of trying to repair yourself and a willingness to talk and willingness to follow a program if need be. But so sad are there to talk.
Anyone that's been watching this video, you've seen the GoFundMe flashing up at the bottom of your screen throughout this interview. So if you're listening to it, there is a link to the GoFundMe in the description. Every euro, every pound counts. It's going to these three very specific, very local, very, very important charities. And Jonny, listen, I just want to say, first of all, thank you so much for sharing your story. It's an incredible story. You've come through some dark times, and it's good to see that. Generally, we come out stronger than we go in, and you have a bike behind you there that is about to set off on this trip to repay some back, and I wish you the very best of luck with it. I'm sure everyone that's listening and watching wishes you the very best of luck with it. And I'd make one request, and that is that you get as much footage and as many pictures as you can, and share them live if you get signaled. Share some on the actual journey.
Oh yes, so the lad with the beard is the Instagram, and that's probably where I will keep the most up to date posts as I'm traveling along.
Well, listen, Jonny, it's been really, really nice to speak to you. It's an incredible story. It's an incredible adventure. That's a class touch with the names on the flag. So certainly from our side, I'll make sure that gets pushed out, because it would be nice to see as many names on that as possible, and keep you stood up reading in the freezing cold for as long as we can.
Well, thank you very much for having me, and it's my pleasure. Thank you.